The house appeared in the listing overnight. No photos of the inside. No history. Just a single sentence. Recently renovated. Quiet neighborhood. The price was far too low, but curiosity won. From the moment the new owners stepped inside, something felt wrong. The air was warm, heavy, almost sticky, as if the walls were breathing. Every mirror in the house reflected the rooms slightly differently. Doors appeared where there should have been blank walls. Hallways felt longer on the way back. The strangest thing was the silence. No echoes, no outside noise. Even voices sounded muffled, as if the house was swallowing sound itself. On the second day, they noticed the photos. Framed pictures lined the hallway, showing unfamiliar people standing inside the house. In the kitchen, in the bedroom, smiling, watching. When they looked closer, they realized the background in the photos was changing. Furniture appeared that hadn't been there before. Objects moved. By nightfall, a new photo appeared at the end of the hall. It showed them, sleeping. Panic set in. They tried to leave, but the front door opened into the living room. Windows revealed only darkness, no street, no sky. The house had folded in on itself. The walls began to shift, slowly rearranging the rooms. Each time a room changed, another photo appeared. The people inside the frames looked older, thinner, their smiles forced and broken. A whisper finally came, not from the walls, but from the photos themselves. The house remembers. By morning, the listing vanished. The house stood empty again, but inside, the hallway gained new frames. Fresh ones, faces pressed against the glass, eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams, waiting to be remembered. Backhand index pointing right if you like original haunted house stories like this. Subscribe for more dark and unsettling tales. No one had lived in the house on Willow Street for over 30 years. The paint was peeling, the windows were cracked, and the front door was always slightly open, even though no one ever touched it. Neighbors said the house breathed at night. When Emma moved in, she didn't believe the stories. She needed a cheap place to live after her divorce, and the house was the only one she could afford. The realtor avoided eye contact and rushed through the paperwork. "People say it's haunted," she said quietly. Emma laughed. "People say a lot of things." The first night was silent. The second night, Emma woke up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of footsteps upstairs. Slow footsteps, careful, as if someone didn't want to be heard. She grabbed her phone and checked the upstairs rooms. They were empty, cold, too cold. On the third night, doors began opening on their own. The air smelled damp, like something rotting inside the walls. Emma found deep scratch marks on the bedroom door, as if someone had tried to escape. She decided to search the house's history. 31 years earlier, a family named Harris had lived there. One night, the police were called because neighbors heard screaming. When officers arrived, the house was empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just silence. That night, Emma dreamed she was standing in the hallway, unable to move. The walls pulsed slowly, like lungs breathing. A child's voice whispered from behind her, "Don't let it see you." She woke up with handprints on her arms. They were small, too small to be hers. The activity grew worse. Lights flickered, mirrors cracked. Whispers followed her from room to room. One evening, Emma noticed the attic door was open. She was sure it had been locked. Inside the attic, she found a single chair facing the corner. The walls were covered in writing, carved deep into the wood. "IT won't let US leave." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her. The temperature dropped, and the darkness felt thick, alive. A shadow detached itself from the corner. stretching unnaturally across the floor. "You live here now." Emma screamed as hands grabbed her ankles, pulling her toward the wall. The house groaned, satisfied. The Marlowe mansion had always been avoided by the townspeople. Its blackened walls and broken windows seemed to absorb light, and the gardens were choked with weeds. When the Anders family inherited the property, they thought it was a lucky opportunity. But the moment they stepped inside, something felt wrong. The air was thick, heavy, as if the house itself breathed around them. Emma, the youngest, felt watched. She wandered toward a crystal chandelier and noticed that the reflections in the crystals didn't match her movements. One swung slowly, even when there was no draft. The first night brought strange visions. In the living room, paintings shifted subtly, faces turned, eyes followed, mouths twisted in silent screams. The fireplace glowed faintly even though it hadn't been lit, casting shadows that moved against the walls. In the study, a book opened on its own, revealing pages filled with names, people who had once lived there, or perhaps never left. At dinner, silverware rearranged itself into patterns that seemed deliberate, pointing toward corners where no one stood. Emma's mother, Clara, began hearing whispers behind mirrors, soft and indecipherable, and felt sudden chills as if someone had passed through her. By the third day, the mansion showed more intent. Doors opened into empty spaces, and the ceilings seemed to lower and rise unpredictably. Emma discovered a hidden drawer beneath the stairs containing a small music box. When wound, it played a lullaby that made the walls pulse faintly, and the portraits appeared calmer, almost attentive. The family realized the house responded to them. Happiness or care brought warmth. Fear or anger brought cold. Drafts and flickering lights. They began tending the mansion gently, dusting, arranging books, speaking kindly. Slowly it relaxed. Shadows no longer lingered in corners. Mirrors reflected accurately, and whispers became soft, almost comforting. Emma understood that the mansion was alive, not hostile. It watched and remembered, shaping itself according to those within. By the end of the week, the Anders family could move freely, yet the house never lost its presence. On foggy nights, Emma still saw subtle movements in the chandelier crystals and felt the mansion's awareness, a silent acknowledgement that it had accepted them, yet it would always be alive, holding its secrets within blackened walls. The Marlowe mansion was no longer a place to fear, but a place that required respect and understanding, a living entity that existed beyond simple description. When the new family moved into the old house on the edge of town, the neighbors watched silently from behind their curtains. The house had been standing there for over 100 years, tall, gray, with cracked walls and dark windows that never seemed to reflect light. No one had lived there for a long time, and no one talked about why. Tomas and Petra wanted a fresh start, a quiet place, a garden for their children, and distance from the chaos of the city. The price was suspiciously low, but the real estate agent only smiled and said the house needed a little care. She never mentioned the families who had left in the middle of the night. The first night was silent, too silent. No cars, no wind, no animals. Only the ticking of an old clock hanging in the hallway. Tomas wanted to remove it, but Petra said it made the house feel alive. At exactly 3 a.m., Tomas woke up. He heard footsteps upstairs, slow and heavy, as if someone was walking barefoot across the wooden floor. He tried to convince himself it was just the house settling. Then he heard it, a soft child's laugh. Petra was asleep. The children were in their room. The laugh came again, closer this time. Tomas opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty, but the air was freezing cold. His breath turned into mist. In the morning, Petra noticed the hallway clock had stopped. The hands were frozen at 3 a.m. No matter what Tomas tried, it wouldn't start again. That evening, their daughter Anna refused to go upstairs alone. She said a woman stood in the corner of her room and watched her sleep. That night, everyone heard the footsteps. They moved from the attic slowly down the stairs. Then came the knocking, 3 slow knocks coming from inside the walls. Not doors, not windows, the walls themselves. Tomas went to the attic. The door was already open. Inside, there were handprints on the wall. Small, child-sized. The house grew worse each day. Objects moved on their own. Whispering filled the halls at night. Petra woke up with scratches on her arms and no memory of how they appeared. Tomas searched the history of the house. Years ago, a woman had lived there with her 2 children. After her husband disappeared, neighbors reported screaming at night. One winter, the house went silent. The woman was found hanging in the hallway. The children were never found. That night, the whispers became clear. Stay. The walls began to bleed. The clock started ticking again, counting down. At the end of the hallway stood the woman, her neck twisted, her eyes empty. 2 children stood beside her, holding hands. You live here now, she whispered. The family ran and never came back. The house still stands. And every night at 3 a.m., the footsteps returned. The house at the end of Maple Street had been empty for more than 20 years. People said no one ever stayed long inside it. Not because it was old or falling apart, but because the house was awake at night. When a young family moved in, the neighbors only watched in silence. The first night was quiet. The second night brought footsteps from the attic, even though no one had gone up there. By the third night, slow knocking came from inside the walls, as if something was trying to escape the house itself. The mother began to notice that every clock stopped at exactly 3 a.m. every single night. The father refused to believe it until he woke up and saw a dark figure standing in the bedroom doorway. It did not move. It only waited. When he turned on the light, the figure vanished, but dark handprints remained burned into the wood. The worst place was the child's room. Their son spoke about the man in the wall who whispered his name when his parents slept. He said the man had no face, only a wide mouth that never closed. Every morning, new cracks appeared in the walls, spreading like veins, as if the house was slowly breathing. One night, every door in the house opened at once. Freezing air filled the hallway, and a voice rose from downstairs. It did not sound human. It sounded like many voices speaking through one throat. It was calling them down, calling them home. When the police arrived after a desperate emergency call, the house was empty. The family had vanished without a trace. Only one thing remained. On the wall of the child's room, carved deep into the plaster, were the words, "The house chooses who belongs to it." The house stands empty again, but if you listen closely at night, you can still hear footsteps and knocking from inside the walls. The house on Hollow Lane had stood empty for decades, yet every window looked awake. When Mark and Lena moved in, the air felt heavy, like a held breath. At night the walls whispered, not words, but memories. Old laughter slid through the halls, followed by grief so sharp it burned the chest. Objects changed places without warning. Family photos aged overnight, faces blurring as if time itself was nervous. One evening Lena found a door that had never existed before, painted the same color as dried blood. Behind it was a narrow room filled with mirrors. Each reflection showed the house at a different age. Alive, decaying, burning, rebuilding. Mark tried to smash the glass, but his reflection smiled back and shook its head. The mirrors began to hum, and the floor pulsed like a heart. They realized the house was not haunted by ghosts, but by choices, by every life once lived there. Trapped in endless replay, the house needed witnesses. When they tried to leave, the road outside folded into the yard, looping them back to the porch. At dawn, the mirrors went dark. Silence returned. The front door opened by itself, gentle, inviting. Mark and Lena stepped out, unsure if they were free or simply part of the story now. If this story pulled you in, please like, share, and subscribe for more haunted tales.